Now, that's north.
Yeah.
So I try that small sycamore first.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. Distance 10.4.
10.4.
Yeah. Diameter 44 centimetres.
Okay, so Phil and Guy, can you just give us an insight into what's being done here as part of the project? Maybe if you, Phil, can discuss the ground survey that we've done here, and then Guy, you know, the digital remote survey, and explain as well why CCF, you know, why the rationale behind choosing CCF as the silvicultural management technique on the woodlands here at Forestry.
Well, Plassenyal is a fascinating woodland. It isn't one woodland, it's divided up into different blocks, but it's all part of a designated parkland landscape, which means that the history of the woodlands goes back a very, very long time. And it also accounts for some of the characteristics of the woodland. There's some very old trees here. It accounts for the species that are here. It accounts for the changes of management or the changes of land use that have been over a very long period. And so it's a record for all those things. But in the present, it ends up as being a very, very diverse and quite complex woodland. The reason why the Farming Connect project was initiated really is that how can you bring woodlands such as these into management so that they're useful for the farm. A form of integration is bringing the woodlands into the farm economy, and here at Plassenyal there's this fantastic example where the house is heated from wood fuel. That wood fuel would have traditionally been bought in, whereas there's this fantastic resource here. But like I say, that resource has also got landscape values, and so any management needs to reconcile producing timber with the landscape or the designation of the woodland. Continuous cover enables you to do all those things at once. The management of the different blocks is very diverse, so there's huge contrast here that, you know, there are some places where the wood has blown down in the past, the timber's been cleared, the ground has been bare for a long time, and Hugh has replanted those areas. So those trees are only this high, whereas the trees we're standing in now are much, much older. You know, these are relics of the parkland woodland. There are massive great beeches here. There's all this very high quality sycamore that we're standing underneath. What continuous cover does is it allows you to manage all those different areas simultaneously. So maintaining some of the landscape benefits, but also producing timber at the same time. But while you're doing that, you're also providing huge biodiversity benefits as well. You know, the amount of habitat in these woodlands is absolutely incredible. There are various issues that have been identified, which is, you know, some of the areas need fencing off, some of the areas are understocked, some of them are overstocked, but the survey has accounted for all of that, all those differences, all that variation. And it's allowed us to be able to, with a Farming Connect forest management plan, to come up with a plan for the woodland and estimate what the sustainable production from this woodland is. Sustainable being that you only harvest what the woodland is producing. All right. Now, because the woodland is in all these different states, you can also model how things are going to change over the next, say, 15 years. Continuous cover is the way that you achieve all those things. So the survey is a management tool so that you can then manage by continuous cover. It gives Hugh a very clear idea of what the species composition is, what the size composition is, and how that woodland can be managed. But we wanted, as part of the project, and this is where Guy comes in, is that we really wanted to look at how we could find cost-effective ways of doing these assessments in a broad brush way, and then identify the places which are really valuable, and then go in and do surveys on that. So I'll hand over to Guy now, because he's got some of the technical detail on that.
Yeah. So to investigate forest structure, which is an important part of continuous cover forestry, we completed a really low-cost remote sensing project, which the data came to under £50. And from this data, we were able to analyse gap distribution and gap sizes. Gaps are an important part in stimulating natural regeneration, which is an important aspect of continuous cover forestry. So each compartment we analysed the gap size and structure, and from this data you can essentially classify the forest structures.
Yeah. And is there something you reckon that farmers, with woodlands similar to this one here?
Yeah, in some respects Placenau is not typical, because it has this designation, it has this unique history. Yeah. But every woodland on every farm in Wales is unique. They are farm woodlands are by nature diverse. There's all sorts of different things because you have these different legacies, so this is an example. This is a project. It's a study in a way of combining the remote sensing on a large scale and then going in and then doing surveys to then draw up management plans so that the woods can be managed sustainably. And it's really important to note that here there is on site local demand. The farm needs timber to heat the house. There's also a tourism business there as well. So all that diversification is, being, the raw material for that is being sourced on site. And the key thing is that that's done in a sustainable way. You don't want to overcut. But the figures that we've come up with have shown us that the demand from the farm is very small in relation to how much the forest is growing. So there's this production that can be taken sustainably, that can then supply the farm, and any excess can then be marketed. It can be marketed as wood fuel. But there's some very, very, very valuable stems in this woodland here, particularly the sycamore. Now, if you sell that into the right market in small quantities, the returns are far, far higher than the savings you make from buying in wood fuel from a local wood fuel merchant. So all these things are we've only discovered these things by having a decent survey of the woodland.
Okay, so Phil and Guy, can you just please talk us through the results and just give us an overview of the results from both surveys and the conclusion of the project, please? Okay, David. This here is the spreadsheet that we've put all the data from the sample plots in, and it gives us an overall picture of what there is in the woodland, which is averaged out. And so we know what the standing volume is, we know what the species composition, as we were measuring in the forest. But this is, you can then also look at each individual one, because there are 10 of these sample plots, and they represent the 10 different subcompartments or different areas that you have in Placenau, or Coed Placenau. This shows you the stems per hectare, the species. It shows you the size, which is absolutely critical, because if we have these areas of new planting, no trees at all appear. But because we're measuring the trees, the poles, and the regeneration on the other hand is represented, the restocking or the replanting is recorded in terms of regeneration. So we get this very accurate snapshot of each one of these plots, and we've taken photographs of them, so there's a photographic record as well as all the data and the analysis that goes along with it. We also have the results of the remote sensing that Guy can tell us about now.
Okay, so the remote sensing showed there's a huge diverse range of forest structures in Placenau. We've got areas of very high canopy cover with very few gaps, and then we've got other stands which have very low canopy cover, under 30%, where we can detect that there are regeneration coming up through these gaps. So basically it's just showing that there's huge diversity in structures across the woodlands, and thus the plots are an important way of delving down further into the detail of these different structures.
Yeah, I think it's important to say that what Guy has just described is used on quite a wide scale. What we were doing here, what we've been attempting to do in this study, is to marry up the information that I've derived from the sample plots with what Guy can pick up from remote sensing. So the remote sensing gives us an overview. We can do that on a very wide scale and identify the areas that may need more investigation with more detailed survey as we've been doing here.
So efo'r gwybodaeth da chi wedi dderbyn gan Phil a Guy lle ar canlyniadau o'r surveys gwahanol a'r Woodland Management Plan, be di'r camau nesaf i chi heddiw?
Wel, fyddwn ni'n defnyddio'r cynllun rheoli yna lle ac o'n ni roi cais i fewn i gyfoeth Naturiol Cymru i gael trwydded i dowlyd y coed lle, a dyn ni wedi gallu clusnodi o heddiw bod yna 2 lwyn o goed dyn ni am bwrw ati ac wrach tynnu o i fyny at 20%, a Phil yn mynd i cynghori fi a cyngorthwyo drwy marcio y coed dyn ni isio bwrw ati i'w tywlyd, ond hefyd dwi hefyd yn gwybod beth mae o weld trwy dehongli'r coed lle pa un sydd wedi cael ei tywlyd ac ati lle. So yn yr cais yna fewn wedyn ni'n gael contractwyr draw i dowlyd hinge wrach gobeithio nhw'n neud yma rhyw 30 wythnos a wedyn down ni hinge lawr i'r buarth i'r cefn lle wrach nhw'n adael nhw sychu am y leia 2 dymor a wedyn nhw gael contractwyr draw o Llanrwst i chipio nhw lle. Ond pan down ni ati dowlyd yr batch gyntaf yma lle fyddwn ni'n tywlyd nhw just ar gyfer y chip. Ond wrach yn hir dymor dwi wedi dysgu gan Phil bod ambell i goed yn mwy gwerthawr, so fo'n braidd yn hyrt i ni roi hinge i fewn i'r chipar lle mae werth roed hwnne y goeden yna i'r ochr a wrach chwilio marchnad drwy cymorth Phil i werthu hi. So dyna di'r bwrw mae gennau syniad go lewan o sut i fwrw ati a sut i gynaeafu ganran o'r coed lle.
Dawn. Ydych chi'n teimlo bod y math yma o waith yn rhywbeth ddylia ffarmwrs ymgymryd efo'n fwy yn y dyfodol lle?
Yn bendant mi fysa herwydd y cyngor ydi o'n i'n gwybod, o'n i'n gallu dehongli coed, o'n i'n siŵr am sut i edrych ar goeden i wybod os oedd i werthor neu beidio lle, ond jyst cael y cyngor a hefyd cyngor ar y ffarm hefyd lle di bod yn wych. Yndi, hynna ddiolchgar iawn.
Brilliant.